Let's speak now more about the Limpopo Provincial Conference with political analyst Doctor Levy Ndou. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Dr. Ndou. Let's first start with the President's declaration of innocence from corruption or any nefarious activity. There's been a lot of talk about it, the perceived smokes and mirrors. We've heard from the Presidency, and you've heard now from that excerpt we played of the statement made by the Deputy Minister of State Security, Zizi Kodwa. Your thoughts about how all of this has played out?
Good evening, Tsepiso. Good evening to the viewers at home. Well, I think this is the season that we all expect, that towards elective conferences of the ANC and also in other political parties, you'll get kinds of allegations and stories similar to this one. But I think it's important that President Ramaphosa had to use this opportunity in Polokwane to break his silence in order to outline his side of the story. What we do know is that indeed something suspicious appears to have happened, and that is why there is a case that has been opened. We have also heard his side of the story. But the unfortunate part is that all these things are happening outside the legal framework. Of course, when you have this kind of instances, you need to give the law enforcement agencies sufficient space to be able to do their work. And in this instance, I would expect that we be able to get exactly what happened so that President Ramaphosa and South Africans at large are able to move forward. But what is more important, I think, in my view, is that these kind of things have to be resolved as quickly as possible so that if indeed Ramaphosa wants to continue with his political life, he does so without any form of cloud hanging over his head.
So just talk to me about what would be justifiable cloud over the president's head as he vies for a second term as head of state. When he came in as president, I remember words like the lesser of two evils in comparison with former President Jacob Zuma was used, particularly because he was deemed to have his own money. But those very interests are now under the spotlight, with the DA having even written to the SARS commissioner asking if President Ramaphosa would have declared any of these monies. President Ramaphosa disputing the amount that is out there in the public, but I don't think that is necessarily the problem. It's about his business interests and his perceived use of his political office to make money, or even a trade where some would have said would be unethical ground.
Well, I think what is quite important is the fact that he himself acknowledges and he makes a point to all of us that indeed he's in the business of cattle farming and game. Equally so, I'm trying to think a situation in which the sitting head of state is then able to run the day-to-day activities of the farm. But in his response through the spokesperson, I've just read the story that says that all these things happened whilst he was not there. But the unfortunate situation is that here is the sitting head of state, and there are certain things that are quite suspicious that actually happened in his own residence. This on its own puts him on the spot, in the sense that when he came into the ANC leadership and indeed in government, he is the person who has been fearless and very loud on matters relating to crime and corruption. And if you have got this kind of a situation happening right in his own property, it raises a lot of questions. But I want to emphasize the point that now that this kind of investigation is going on, maybe the entire truth will have to come out.
All right.
There are some people, on the other hand, who appears to be saying that this is political motivated. It might be political motivated, but indeed, if there is a case to be answered, we'll actually expect the president.
Dr. Ndou, and I want to delve into that. I mean, you spoke about the experience of using the Limpopo conference, provincial conference, to come out in the open around this issue, what some might consider as a friendly ground, given that Stan Mathabatha, as Premier of Limpopo, called upon him to take up that invitation to run for president again for a second term. But there's also, as you say, we've got to look at the context within which all of this is happening. It's been pointed out that Arthur Fraser is believed to be a known ally of former President Jacob Zuma, and there's what some have pointed to as the mysterious or suspicious release of this video material of said thieves and how they spent the loot. Unpack that for us. Your thoughts around timing, obviously, is everything, but to what end?
Well, I think, as you correctly indicated, context does matter. And I think what most people will be asking will be that, why are these issues only coming out now as we are moving towards the elective conference of the ANC? If indeed something wrong had happened 2 years ago, one would have expected that such be reported at that time. And hence, a concern will be raised regarding the timing of this matter. Of course, the timing is quite correct in the sense that because Ramaphosa's desire and the campaign towards his second term appears to be very obvious. And of course, some might then come with the views that says that those who appear to be against Ramaphosa's re-election for second term would actually come with different strategies in order to frustrate his campaign for second term. Of course, if it happened now and in the manner that it has actually happened, it raises those kind of suspicions. Equally so, if something wrong has actually happened, in South Africa, in our constitutional democracy, we are all equal before the law. And of course, a proper explanation will therefore be required, not only from Ramaphosa, but also from all the people that are involved in this matter, so that South Africa is actually seen as a country that respects laws and that treats all citizens equally.
All right, so let's thread this, let's take the needle through this thread of leadership, particularly collective leadership that would support President Ramaphosa as he continues. We've seen Stan Mathabatha has been re-elected to lead the ANC in Limpopo. The organization now has the mammoth task of finding a candidate who is eligible to be the province's next premier-elect. How will that work, given some of these challenges? Obviously, Mathabatha's slate has won by a large margin, which he says is indicative of unity in the province. Are we likely to see this in other parts of the country, and particularly with regards to the eligibility, the desirability of President Ramaphosa as leader?
Well, I think what I've observed, not only with the conference in Limpopo, with other regional conferences and the provincial conferences in the Eastern Cape, is that the slate politics appear to be entrenched in the ANC. And what appears to be lacking in the ANC is the ability of contestants and members of the ANC in general to be able to persuade each other on matters relating to leadership, so that they avoid these unnecessary elections that raises tensions within the party. And of course, with the re-election of Mathabata in Limpopo, it has become quite clear that the support of Ramaphosa is intact in Limpopo, and you could have observed by the delegates themselves as they were singing, raising two fingers on the air, which was indicative of the fact that they want Ramaphosa for second term. And obviously, now that Limpopo is becoming one of the biggest provinces in South Africa, its influence at national level will also be heard. But we don't only have to say it is a cast on the stone. We still have other provinces that still have to go to conferences, and equally they'll have to make their own pronouncements. But what I see being a diversion in the ANC is that elective conferences appears to focus mainly on elections and not discuss other important issues like policies. But Limpopo, for me, has actually performed in a very outstanding manner because they were able to deal with elections, and equally so, they were able to deal with policy issues, and they've also made pronouncements on what they think should actually be discussed at a national policy conference of the ANC. And I would expect other provinces to do so.
As we're running out of time, as you rightly say, it's about policies, but also the implementation of policies. Stan Mathabata himself spoke about the step-aside policy and how it'll be important for members to go back, revise that policy. And I mentioned this because Mathabata is again deputized by Florence Radzilani, and Florence Radzilani and Treasurer General Danny Msiza were both implicated in a report over widespread looting of VBS Mutual Bank. So beyond the optics here, the people who will take this leadership forth, are they committed to these principles that they espouse? Because it's one thing coming up with better policies on how to create jobs, invest better in infrastructure and people, upskilling people, creating bigger markets for the groundswell. But it's about holding yourself true to these principles.
Of course. What is important about policies is that on a regular basis, policies have to be amended. They can be improved. They can also be done away with. And I think one must commend Limpopo for its own ability and boldness to say there are certain areas of the policies that are supposed to be amended or they are supposed to be reintroduced. That is exactly what you expect from members of a political party. What I see as a bigger challenge in the ANC in general is that they are able to identify challenges facing society and problems facing everyone in the country. But what appears to be lacking is the implementation. The ANC and ordinary South Africans raises similar issues on a regular basis. Unemployment, service delivery, improving the health system, and the list goes on. But we see very little being done in order to deal with those challenges.
Indeed, and
in my own view, I expect them to do something better so that they are able to achieve on their challenges.
Indeed, and the biggest enemy of this is, as you and many of others have said, corruption. Thank you so much for your time, your insights. Much appreciated, Dr. Levy Ndou, political analyst.